Conspiracy continues with blocking my advancement to the left. I blame this side. While you're turning in your books, in your Bibles to the book of Galatians, I will remove the impediment. But you guys screwed it to the floor too, didn't you? Be on par with you guys. That's what you get when you get. There. I'll give it its own chair. Maybe it'll pay attention and stay awake. Galatians chapter 4. Before we get started, I'd like to make a small announcement, several actually. Oh, we had announcement time. Hey, VBS is coming up. We're short some workers. If you have time during the summertime, if you have opportunity during the summertime, we have some sign-up sheets out there in the foyer. And the salvation of young kids are vital to the health of a church. And so VBS is a great way of reaching out into the community. So if you've got time during the weeks of VBS, please go back and sign up if you will. Also, we have two families that are leaving us this week. This is the last Sunday for the Irwin family, who have been with us for a while. They're going to San Antonio, correct? We're just retired and we're headed to San Antonio. And we also are going to say goodbye to, to the Fisher family, who are PCSing in June, to South Carolina, correct? And I want to thank Jim and Tracy for the work they've done here with Skyline. And so on your way out today, please thank both families for their work and their attendance here and for the ministry they provide to Skyline, and that they will be greatly missed. The great thing about being part of a body of Christ is that we don't really say goodbye. We have the hope that we will eventually see them again one day. And this being a military town, we definitely know that we have a good chance of seeing folks again on a repeated basis. So as we leave out today, please be sure to shake both these families' hands for being here. Galatians chapter 4, and while you're still turning there, I'm going to take a sip of water because, again, it is increasingly warm up here. It's hotter than a $2 pistol, but it's my burden to bear, or my cross to burden, but whichever one of those metaphors you want me to mix. Galatians chapter 4, verse 1. I mean that the heir, as long as he is a child, is no different from a slave, though he is the owner of everything. That was my public school education coming in there right there. Though he is the owner of everything, but he is under guardians and managers until the date set by his father. In the same way also, when we were children, we were enslaved to the elementary principles of the world. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive the adoptions as sons. Because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So that you're no longer a slave, but a son, and if a son, then an heir through God. Formerly, when you did not know God, you were enslaved to those that are by nature are not God's. But now that you've come to know God, or rather to be known by God, how can you turn back again to the weak and worthless elementary principles of the world, whose slaves you want to be once more? You observe days, months, seasons, and years. I am afraid I may have labored over you in vain. Pick up here in chapter 4, and while chapter 4 delineates a break in our Bible, it really is a continuation of an argument that has been going on for quite some time. And we saw last week about how when an individual is held captive under law, the purpose of the law, its point, its mission, its goal, was enslavement. We were captives. Paul uses two analogies of that of a captive being held in captivity by the law, or as a young boy who's going off to school to be monitored by the tutor. If you're reading ESV, it used the word guardian last week, and this week it's using the word guardian, two separate words. They can have a similar, same meaning, but not the same. Last week, the word that we read in ESV that says guardian really means tutor or schoolmaster, and we discussed that. That is an individual designed for the discipline of a child when he gets out of line at school, and he would take great joy in whipping his master's son. That was the law. This week we look at the word, and the word really means guardian. It means an individual who is placed to watch over a young man for the sake of monitoring him, not for disciplinary. The other one was for school and discipline. And then you see the word steward or managers. Those are individuals that monitor things. So while this young boy, let's take a look, if an heir, as long as he is a child, doesn't differ any longer from a slave, he is the owner of everything, but he is under a guardian. While a young boy in the Roman world was the homeowners, the landowners, the individual's son, he really was no better off than a slave. Though he possessed everything, it isn't his. Now, what does that look like? Well, I'll give you a good example. We'll use a will, but wills do not fall into this category. I and my brother and my sister own everything of my parents. We just have to wait for them to die to get it. This sounds horrible, but in a one real sense, you go through the house, and I know people that do this. They put names underneath the stuff, the things that they want, and then put it back on the shelf. How many of y'all have ever done that? How many of you would ever admit that? Probably the same group. I own it, but it's not mine. That's not what's meant here. It's not talking about a will. It's not talking about something that when they die, they get it. This is what would be a living trust. The father has determined that the son is going to get something at a predisposed time, and when that time comes, the child gets it. But until then, while he owns it, it's given to him. It's in writing. He won't have it. But until that time comes, he doesn't own squat. And he's also treated at times no better than a slave. The analogy continues on with the law. Folks, what a lot of commentators think is Paul here is addressing more the Judaizers, and in a minute he'll address the Gentile audience and explain to them that they don't have the truth either. And so what he has here is, look, you have this problem. You do not fully possess it under the law. You are kept under guardians, set by the date. In the same way also, when we were children, we were enslaved to elementary principles. Again, using the analogy of children, the law has that one purpose. It treats you as a captive, it treats you as a slave, it treats you as a child, it treats you as basic, rudimentary things. Held captive under the elemental things, the ABCs of the walk. In the Army, we used to call it breaking it down Barney style. Breaking it down Barney style. How many of y'all know the big fat purple thing on TV that sings, I love you? Right? It's about the time I shoot the No, I'm kidding. Breaking it down Barney style in the Army means you walk over to the soldier and you go, you're going to stand up. You're then on your little feetsies going to walk over there and grab that green thing. And then you're going to bring it all. It's very, very simplistic. When you were under the law, you were held prisoner to very simplistic things. You were treated as a child. And so the question keeps coming back when in discussion, well, I got the understanding of the grace by faith alone, but why do people keep bringing this back around? Because, folks, it's so easy for us to fall back into. There's an aspect where we, like I mentioned last week, we kind of have Stockholm Syndrome with the law. We've been held captive for so long, we think it's the good thing. And this freedom stuff over here that comes through Jesus Christ is the bad thing. And so what we do is we go grab and get a big whole head full of law and say, I want one. It's very basic. And it's very elementary thinking. And we're held captive to that. Until the fullness of time in which the Father had set, the child does not receive the inheritance. Notice what Paul then does. Verse 4. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law. Up until this point, you were held captive to the law. Up until this point, you were just like an heir being managed by a slave managing your property. But when the fullness of that time had come and you received your inheritance, so too in the fullness of time the Father sends the Son into the world. Notice, to be born of a virgin. Secondly, born under the very system in which He's about ready to abolish. Third, born to redeem man. So that we, depending on your translation, might receive the adoptions as sons. Three things that come out of this passage. First of all, you have the preexistence of the Son. The Father, at the time before creation, has already predetermined the time in which the Son is coming into the world. God didn't wake up one day and say, wow, things are pretty bad in the first century. Jesus, get your baby clothes on and get in the game. That's deism, folks. That's deism. The Father and the Son had already known when the time that was going to occur of His coming was going to happen. It was only a secret to us. But if you read the Old Testament, it was the worst kept secret of all, right? Because if you read the Old Testament, you know He's coming. Born of a virgin. This comes from what Matthew cites and also from Isaiah 7:14. Born of a woman in some passages. Born under the law. So it talks about His pre-existence. It talks about His being invested with authority. Why? Because He comes to redeem. Only deity redeems, folks. Only deity redeems. If we have sheep and lambs, they are incapable. Go read Hebrews. It talks about how continually imperfect men offered imperfect sacrifices for sin. But Christ was a one-time perfect sacrifice. It is an element of deity and the investment of authority in this individual. It has the essential or essence of deity. Why? Because you receive adoptions by His redemption. Because you are sons of God. Why? He sends the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, giving us the ability to do what? Make new laws? Follow new paths? To cry out, Abba, Father. Some believe that there's the word our in there. Father, our Father. The connotation of personal and intimate. What Christ does upon the cross is remove the penalty of the law and redeems man back. So when we want to be held by the elementary things of the world, what we are saying is that God has sent the Son into the world to redeem us. That, this is neat. It's cool. It's clever. But thank you, I would like to play somewhere else. What Paul says earlier at the end of chapter 2, that if we seek to find righteousness as part of the law, Christ's death is absolutely in vain. See, at the fullness of time, when God had determined the Son comes into the world, born as the prophecy state, come to do something for you and I that we cannot do. We are delivered by the works of Christ alone, through faith alone, by His grace alone. And we don't like that because we like to have says in things. And the fact of the matter is, folks, our say comes secondary. Christ's action is primary. And therefore, we look at the situation and go, well, that's just not right. That's just not fair. We like to try to add to it some form of legalism. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. Notice your shift. You are no longer held captive. You are no longer the kid who's got the schoolmaster following you around. You are no longer the individual that has someone else monitoring you and monitoring your land. You are now a son of God. You shift. But here's the thing. When we begin to attach rules to the work of Christ, we say no and want to transition back to very elementary things. Remember, I keep mentioning the fact that the world's response to Christ's work is universalism, legalism, and sacerdotalism. It's a typical world response. And actually, the church responds in two ways. Universalism, some people in the church respond universally. I know some universalist individuals in the church. Not this church, but in the church. I go to heaven because I die. You see, you keep repeating this a lot. Yeah, I know. In repetition, there is learning, right? I go to heaven because I die. Legalism, I go to heaven because I keep rules. I go to heaven because I check blocks. I go to heaven because I'm better than that person over there because I saw what they did last week at the theater. I go to heaven because I'm better than that person over there because I saw what was in their buggy at the store. I go to heaven because I'm better than that person over there because I heard them say a word that I have never said. I go to heaven because I'm better than... See, that's legalism, folks. And that's works-based theology. And it has no grace. And it has no real forgiveness because it meets pain and penalty and frailty with law and coldness and harshness. Sacerdotalism. I was baptized. I know a lot of waterlogged Baptists, but they are not saved. I said a prayer. Yippee-ki-yay. I watched an atheist say a prayer. I actually watched a kid that was wanting to offer sacrifices to a foreign god and asked me if I'd help him. I said, no, I'm sorry, brother. I'm not helping you do this. Offer a prayer to a deity that never existed. Gave 2 olives and a grape, rolled up in a little letter and burned it and offered it up. I thought it was the weirdest thing ever. He still failed his PT test. There was an element where I wanted to go, well, I guess that sacrifice really went through, didn't it? Maybe you should have put some chicken on there. Maybe your God's a vegetarian. I don't know. I said a prayer. I walked an aisle. I went to communion. I went to first communion. Those are sacraments. That's sacerdotal living. That's another way of responding. And all those are elementary things. They are very basic things. And they are things that make us slaves. But sons on the other hand, sons have a different relationship. Sons have the ability to look at God and not see angry God, oh, if I sin, something bad happens to me, but sees a father, my father. And if a son, then I am also an heir. See, I'm not an individual cut off. I'm not an individual held in captivity. I am not an individual waiting. But I'm an individual that is an heir. An heir to the things of God. An heir of salvation. Verse 8. I'm clipping right along. We may actually beat the Methodists to the white meat today. Formerly, when you did not know God, you were enslaved to those by nature are not God's. Before you knew Christ, lest you Gentiles think you're any better, is one argument to look at it. So you look at the Jews, and the Jew goes, well, we got Father Abraham, and we have the law. Great. You were a slave under it. Great. It was a tutor to you. Great. It managed your life until the fullness of time had come. And the Gentiles are going, well, yeah, we don't have any of that. No, you're right. You bow down at every tree, bush, and rock that came along and went, you are my God. Go read the book of Isaiah. Brilliant imagery about idols. A man takes a piece of wood. He cuts down a tree. A third of it he takes to a woodsmith and he carves on it and makes a god. Another third he chops up and puts in the fire and says, I am warm. And then another part he cooks his food over and goes, I am filled. And bows down to the piece of wood and goes, you're my God. And we all giggle at that, but that's the insanity of it. Another passage says, a man takes a piece of wood and takes it to a craftsman, a piece of wood that does not rot or doesn't teeter-totter, and then covers it with gold and jewels and goes, you are my God. And then it picks it, and then because the God can't move and needs some help, you pick it up and carry it to a new place and set it down. Your God is immobile. Piece of wood. And the only time he's mobile is when he goes this. You ever had that chair in your house? The one... You all know the one, right? That when you sit on, kind of does this. That. You know how annoying that is? Imagine if you were the God like that and you couldn't stand up straight. Imagine how annoying that would be. You were held captive to the things of nature. That's what Paul talks about over in Romans. God reveals himself through the world, and we take the revelation of God, and then we go to the bush and go, you're such a beautiful God. I hope you're not made of plastic, because I really look stupid now. You are held captive to basic elementary things, the ABCs of the world. And if it wasn't any better, you were held captive to worshiping a piece of wood. Hopefully your God floats. You throw a lot of silver on there, though. He ain't going to float. But now that you have come to know God, or rather be known by God. Notice this phraseology. This is interesting. A lot of people don't like this phraseology, but that's okay. I use an example. How many of you have ever heard of Charles Ryrie have a Ryrie study Bible? None of you in this room have a Ryrie study Bible. Okay, got one or two. How many of you have ever heard of Charles Ryrie? Wow. Okay, well, I got one over here. I got two. I got a handful. This analogy may not work at all. Yeah, Charles Ryrie, big-time theologian, taught some at Dallas Seminary. He developed a study Bible. Has a very smart man, very good theologian. And I know Charles Ryrie. Charles Ryrie may not be able to pick me out of a lineup, but I know the man. Why? I've sat in the classroom with the man. I've sat and talked with the man. We sat and told jokes together. We've sat outside of the school with my best friend. We would sit and talk for hours. We all know people like that, right? We got people that we know like that, but they could never pick us out. Why? Because he deals with so many students on so many different levels. So it's one thing where I say, well, I know Charles Ryrie. I've met Charles Ryrie. That's more of an acquaintance situation. But it's another thing if Charles Ryrie knows me, now isn't it? There's a lot of people that know God. There's a lot of people that know about God. There's a lot of people that know about the things of God. If you get on any debate page anywhere on the internet, you've got people want to tell you what God is and what God is not. And they think they know who God is. And it's one thing to say you know who God is. It's another thing for God to know who you are. It's one thing for you to be known by God for salvation. Legalism, sacerdotalism, universalism. These are attempts at where we try to know God, but we fail because we're not seeking to be known by God. See, to be known by God is that He is the initiator of the action. When I wanted to know Stephanie and wanted her to know that I was interested in Stephanie, I stalked this poor woman for a year. I bought 50 books I've not read. Am I lying? I made it apparent that I wanted to know her. I pursued her and knew her. She knew who I was, but barely knew that I existed. I think she blew me off, thought I was a weird guy that came into the bookstore, and I wondered how she figured that out so fast. But now that you've come to know God, or rather to be known by God, it places the emphasis upon who has the knowledge and who is the owner of the knowledge. And the knowledge is that God knows you. The important thing that it is God that knows you, and you are known to Him for the purpose of salvation. Not for the purpose of law. Not for the purpose of faith plus works. Not for the purpose of, I said a prayer. There's a lot of people that think they know who God is, that come Resurrection Sunday, come the rapture, they're going to be sitting in church wondering where all the people are at. How can you turn back again to the weak and worthless and elementary principles of the world, whose slaves you once had been? On both my tours, I left out of Fort Hood to go to Iraq. And the first time I get off the plane in Iraq, the smell, if you've never been to Iraq, is absolutely atrocious. The nation just stinks. That's just the best way to put it. Just walk off the plane. And none of us wanted to be there. We were there for a purpose. We were there for a mission. But if you were to take a vote from us, we would all rather be back here. But then, as we got on the plane to go home, we land in Bangor, Maine, and while we're in the States and life is good and great, we're not free yet. We still have one more leg of the flight to go. And then when we get to Robert Gray, the hatch cracks open on the door, the light streams into the cab, and we all get at the top of the stairs, and there's some guy down there wanting to shake our hand, but almost every one of us at T steps outside and does this and look at the bright sunny sky and goes, we walk down the steps, and when people shake our hands, and we get on the bus, and we see our family, and there's great rejoicing. We're free. See, we had been in Iraq for 4 years doing something that is not necessarily savory for most folks. And when we finally got home, we taste the free air. We're going to have 4 days off. Then we're going to go on 30 days of leave. It's just going to be, we are free. The sun feels better. The air smells better. You don't even care if there's ragweed in the air. Let your eyes cry. That way you can blame that your eyes are tearing up because it's the grass. Not a single one of us ever got off the plane and turned around and said, I think I'll go back right now and climb up the steps and get on the plane. Well, one, we all have to be accounted for, so we would all find that guy and beat him down and put him on a plane. But two, that dude we would think he would be mentally off, would you not? You're free. You don't have to go back. You're here. Smell the air. See how life is. Life is going to be good. You don't have to carry a weapon everywhere you go. Your latrines are actually in your house. Your kitchen is in your house. Go take a shower in your own home. You would think we would be nuts if we all turned around and said, hey, you know what, I think I'll get back on the plane. All I needed, just one more piece of air, now I'm back in the fight. That's kind of the imagery that I see. We have been set free from being a prisoner. We have been set free from being under tyrannical rule. We've been set free from elementary things. And we take the free air in. We breathe it as a convict being released from prison unjust or justly. And we look at the outside world and we go, and you stand there for a few minutes and then you go back to the door of the jail and go, Yeah, I'd like to go back in, please. Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'll just take the old room I had. Yeah, it's fine. And we close the door to the jail, and we lock it, and we throw that key away. And then we go back to our cell, and we put shackles back on our hands and on our feet. And you say, you used this last week. I know. But this is the imagery of what happens when we want to go legalistic. When we want to go faith plus. And we put the shackle back on our hand, and then we go back into our cell, and we close the door to the cell, and we lock the door, and we throw the key down the hallway, and we go, it just feels better. It just feels better. I'm suffering for Jesus here. We would look at that person and go, that person is crazy. That person is nuts. And that person has lost their mind. And yet, folks, spiritually, what we do when we begin to embrace legalism, what we do when we embrace universal, what we do when we embrace secularism, is we sit and we put the bondage back on. We put the chains back on, and then we go sit in our cell and go, man, I feel so much better about myself because I'm better than that guy. Better than that guy. You've turned back to weak, worthless, elementary principles of the world, whose slaves you want to be once more. My grandfather worked in the coal fields before the Great Coalfield War. If you ever do much study on that, when you worked for a coal company, you were a slave. The coal company owned your house. The coal company owned the possessions in your house. When you signed on with the coal company, they advanced you 1 month's pay to where you were always 1 month in the hole. You could only use the pay that they issued you, which was company script. And that script could only be paid for and purchase things at the company store. That's where Tennessee Energy Forms sold my soul to the company store. That's where that line comes from. Tools need sharpening, paid for out of the first month's rent. So you're always stuck. Needing blasting caps and dynamite, paid for by the coal company and charged against your bill. To where if you ever quit the coal company, they immediately evicted your family, took everything in your house because it was paid for by company script, and you were left on the side of the road with nothing within hours. When the Great Coalfield Wars were finished and unions came in, and I'm not a big union fan today, but at that time it was a good thing to come through, and things normalized, that would be the same, the situation would be the same as all those individuals that fought to gain their freedom from being oppressed to saying, you know what, I like that company store model, let's go ahead and reinstitute it again. We are free through the work of Jesus Christ. By His death, burial, and resurrection, by faith alone, through grace alone. And then we turn around and pervert it by bringing rules and laws into it and become a slave again. This is what Paul says about that. You observe days, months, seasons, and years. Going back to Jewish festivals and things like that. We keep the law. We keep the festivals. Yeah, great. Yippee-ki-yay. So what? Purple monkey dishwasher. You want to assign those things towards your salvation? Great, you're a slave again. You want to assign a bunch of legalistic rules to your salvation? Great, you're a slave again. You want to ascribe certain days in which you ought to be in church on Sunday or on Saturday or whatever day? Fine, you're a slave again. This is Paul's response. I am afraid I have labored over you in vain. Calls them foolish Galatians. Asks, who has cast an evil spell upon them? Tells them that this gospel of faith plus is not a gospel at all. And at the end here of this section, he looks and he says, if you want to go back to being a slave, then I have wasted my time. Imagine an apostle saying this to his people. The apostle is speaking scripture. And these are God's words. Let me ask you, church, has you been wasting God's time? Have you been attaching into your life a means of sacerdotalism by which, well, I do all the holy things at church, but I'm going to live a certain way Monday through Friday? Or the way I keep track of how holy I am is I compare myself to somebody else in the church and I keep a list and a tab. Or I just keep a bunch of rules that I don't need to and I try to make everyone else follow them. Have you wasted God's time? Has He labored with you in vain because you wish to be a slave and not a son? See, that's what happens when we embrace these things. We treat Christ's death with contempt. We treat Christ's works with contempt. We take the gift that allows us to look at the Father and say, Dad! And make Him master again. And we think we're doing it to show how holy we are, and what we're doing is demonstrating just what a lack of holiness we have, because we're using elementary things to justify our life instead of the fact to understand that our salvation cannot be determined upon what we do. It's not your works to save you. It's the work of Christ, revealed to us through Scripture alone, by faith alone, given to us by grace alone. I've said this as we've been through the book of Galatians. You can't be good enough. You can't be rich enough. You can't be strong enough. You can't be free enough. You can't be anything enough. It all pales. It is by Christ alone. Have we labored in vain? Has God labored with us in vain? As the praise band comes to sing, you may be here this morning and say, I have tried to live my life by a set of rules that are not possible for me to keep. I've tried to live my life by something that was taught to me a while back, and I have found it to be cold, fruitless, and useless, and I have lived a defeated faith. This morning I'll be at the front. It'll be one flawed individual talking to another flawed individual about the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you've been here for a while and would like to join in fellowship with Skyline, I also will be up here. I invite you to come as the praise band comes and sings.